You know that saying, you are what you eat? Well, if you're from New York and you call these things heroes, that's exactly what you'll be if you make these for your guests. I call them hoagies. Today we're making braised beef hoagies 2 different ways. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dishes and Fishes, where I show you how to cook and set hooks. If you're into fishing or home cooking, hit that subscribe button. I got some good content coming for you guys this year. So let's get this beef going. So for this recipe, most of the time I just use chuck roast, and you only need 2 to 3 pounds to really make a good couple sandwiches. It's pretty cheap and it does a good job in this recipe. But I'm cooking for a few more people today, and I want to make a nice rich broth, so I'm also going to be using some oxtails today. If you're doing this at home, you can use chuck roast, oxtails, short ribs, or any combination of the 3. So I'm going to season those up with salt and pepper and just get them ready to sear off. And I'm just going to sear those off in a pan, make sure I season the other side, and really take your time, especially if you're using chuck roast. It's going to take some time to develop this nice crust. You pretty much can't burn it, I promise you, and once it gets a nice color, just take it out and put it in the crock pot. Yeah, we're using a crock pot for this recipe. I forgot to mention that in my intro. And then do the same thing with the oxtails, just sear them, take your good old time, make sure they get a nice brown crust on them. Then put all that seared meat into your crock pot with some broth. You can use water like I'm doing here. You can also fortify this broth with vegetables if you want to, but I'm trying to keep it simple for the home cook. And put it on high and just tuck it in and let it rest for 4 or 5 hours. Don't leave the rag on it either, fire hazard. We're actually going to make our own rolls. This is Ethan Klebowski, hope I said that right. This is his recipe on YouTube. Check his channel out, it's pretty good. You can obviously buy your own rolls for this too, but we're going to start out with some warm milk. Into that, we're going to add some of this Diastatic malt powder and some yeast. The amounts will be in the description below. And we're going to mix that so the yeast and everything can become acquainted with one another. And in a separate bowl, we're going to put our bread flour, some honey, this is local honey from New England, and some olive oil with some salt. And once the yeast is kind of bubbling up like this in our milk mixture, we're going to add that to our dough and mix it until it forms what he calls a cohesive mass. Then we are going to wrap that and let it rest for 15 minutes before we begin to knead it. And he recommends setting a timer for 8 to 10 minutes. I would agree. You really want to make sure that you knead this adequately to form your gluten strands. So 8 to 10 minutes of kneading, it should become less sticky and able to be stretched out to form what he calls a translucent window. And then we're going to put that back in a greased bowl and let that proof for another hour until it doubles in size. Once it does, we're going to punch it down in preparation for our second rise. I'm weighing this here to get 4 equal-sized portions. They should be between 170 and 180 grams. The amounts for all this stuff, again, will be in the description. And I always like to start with a nice even-sized ball when I'm working with dough. So we're going to start by rolling our balls into rectangles. You can do this more gently if you want to. I just thought it would be quicker with a rolling pin. And then I'm going to roll it up like a cigar. And you should be left with a dough log with this seam on the outside, which you will pinch closed. Then you're just going to roll them back and forth with your hands until they're 8 to 10 inches long. So I'm going to do that with all 4 dough balls, and then I'm going to prep my baking sheets. So I'm going to start by just rubbing it with a light coat of oil and then sprinkling on some of the stone ground cornmeal on the bottom, followed by my hoagie logs. Once they are arranged on my baking sheet, I will wrap them in plastic wrap again and set them on my counter for another hour to proof again. This is the last rise. Now you can score the dough. He is much better at scoring dough than I am. I tried to use my sharp paring knife. It didn't really do too good of a job, but it did well enough. If you have a razor knife, I'd probably use it. And then I'm going to egg wash those with a mixture of egg whites and water. And finally dust the tops with cornmeal. You can also use herbs, everything bagel seasoning, cheese, whatever. Then I'm going to put those into my oven at 375 degrees. And the kicker here is he puts ice into a warm pan to get some steam in the oven. That's going to make your dough more springy. After 10 minutes, I'm going to rotate my pan. And then I'm going to cook them for another 7 to 9 minutes until they are golden brown like this. And I love fresh baked rolls of all kinds. So yes, these are really, really good. Shouts out to that dude for making this recipe. I've made it once before and it does not disappoint. So make sure you check out his channel. I like his videos. Now we're going to prep our sandwich toppings. In the mushroom world, I think shiitake mushrooms are the best. So we're going to quarter these mushrooms into nice bite-sized chunks and then just brown them off with salt and pepper in a pan and set them aside. Then we're going to remove the stem and ribs from our green pepper and just julienne it. This is kind of like a half julienne, like a short julienne. You can see I quartered the pepper for it. And then we're going to julienne an onion roughly the same length strips as our green pepper and set that onion and green pepper mixture aside. Now we're going to do our shallot. This is going to be for our crispy shallots. And basically you just want to cut the shallots into rings as thick as you want. They will brown faster if you cut them really thin. I'm actually cutting them pretty thin. You can maybe use a mandolin for this. I don't know. I just use the knife. But either way, we're going to just fry those off in some 375-degree canola oil until they get nice and brown. No breading, no nothing. They will get brown like this without any type of breading. So once they're brown, we'll take them out and season them with salt and smoked paprika. After 4 or 5 hours, our beef will be nice and tender. And you can see the chuck roast is just peeling right apart. So we're going to remove the chuck roast, put it into a bowl, and we'll put our oxtails on a cutting board and allow them to cool a little bit, and then we're going to peel all the meat off of the oxtails. Take your time with this. Make sure that they're cool enough to handle. And once you have all the meat off the oxtails, put the chuck roast on the board with the oxtails, all the beef on the board, and just rough chop it. Make it the consistency you want. Make sure you get a taste test. And then we're going to season it with Montreal steak seasoning and just end with it being the consistency that you want. Make sure you save that delicious beef juice. I'm going to make some bordelaise sauce with that tomorrow. So for this video, like I said, we're making 2 different sandwiches. We're making a green pepper and onion steak sandwich and a cheddar mushroom sandwich. I would only probably do 1 of these per crock pot, but just for the video, I'm going to do 2. So I'm going to put my green peppers and onions in with my beef. The reason I do this is because I don't want them to be soft and smushy. I kind of want them to maintain some of that crunch, so I do it at the end. Now I'll mix the rest of my beef with my shiitake mushrooms and kind of do the same thing, tuck it into that pan. And I will put some of the broth in there with it just to get it juicy and steamy. Then I'm going to top my green pepper and onion steak with some white cheese. I'm using Gouda and Swiss. And I'm going to put cheddar over my beef and mushroom steak. The residual heat from the crock pot should melt the cheese, and you're left with this nice cheesy mound of cow meat. So now let's build our sandwiches. Let's start by splitting our hoagie roll and put down some QP mayo. This is for the pepper onion sandwich. I like tomatoes on every single sandwich. I'm going to season those tomatoes with some Montreal and then put my green pepper onion mixture and top it with some lettuce just for crunch. And if you don't have a hard time closing the sandwich, then you definitely did it wrong. Our second sandwich, we're going to put some QP mayo and smoked paprika into a bowl. Really easy condiment to add to your arsenal. Then I'm going to put down my beef and mushroom cheddar mixture and my crispy shallots. I would also use some pickled jalapeños on this, but my guests did not want spicy. And that's it, guys. You can prepare this beef crock-pot cheese mixture and serve it on sliders. Perfect for gatherings. Just put the crock-pot out and let your guests go at it. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that recipe. Comment what you guys want to see next, and thanks for watching, guys.